Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How to Plan Your Land and Expand Strategy with Customer Insights. We are very happy to have you here today as part of our Revenue Acceleration Summit. I will be speaking today with David Nelson. My name is Maggie Granger, and I'm a Director of Integrated Marketing at Dun & Bradstreet in our Sales and Marketing Solution area. David Nelson is the Managing Director of Traction Complete. He's been leading that organization for the past 5 years, helping businesses better understand their customers and using automation to help them grow their business. So without further ado, I will jump into the agenda. Today, we'll be going over what we're hearing in the market, the imperative to understand your customer, landing and expanding your own business, really talking about, the challenges that you can find with understanding your customer, landing your business, and then move into alignment activation. We will also have time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So please feel free throughout the presentation to drop those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So we know that 2020 has brought about a lot of change and challenges that are unprecedented. Gartner commissioned a study of CMOs to see what their spend has looked like and what that change has looked like over 2020. So some interesting stats that we wanted to highlight were that 44% of marketers and marketing teams are facing budget cuts due to COVID-19. And of that 44, 11% are facing 15% or more of their budgets being cut. So, this really is highlighting and exemplifying the need for full go-to-market organizations to really be smart with their targeting and where they're putting their money to get the most return on investment. The next stat that we thought was very interesting was 79%, or 80% almost, of CMOs are focusing on existing customers to fuel their growth. New customer acquisition is far more expensive than a cross-sell or an upsell. So it really makes sense that CMOs are wanting to focus on their existing customer base and their existing portfolio to go after that low-hanging fruit and make sure that they're focusing on that portion of their portfolio for new business. The last stat, and I don't think that this would be shocking to many, is that 80% of marketing budgets are being deployed through digital channels in 2020. So, again, this just really highlights it's more important than ever to understand who your customers are and making sure that you're targeting the right accounts with the right message at the right time. So from a D&B perspective, this is what we're hearing in the market. We're hearing that, turns out that hot new prospect, that I was going after is owned by an existing customer. So, that's a lot of wasted time for sales teams. Again, it's all about the sales teams being productive and making sure that they're going after true accounts, or if they're targeting to, existing customer accounts, that they're knowledgeable. Another thing that we're hearing is that, I asked for information about my Ford account, and marketing ops or sales ops or marketing replied that, there's 50 of them. Which one do you want information on? So there really should only be one in an ideal world. And that way, you can have all the information, a 360 view of your customer, and not have to go through all these duplicates. Some other comments that we're hearing is that, it feels like there's a lot more companies out there that we could be selling to. So not having a full understanding of really like your total addressable market is a big one. And then, with so much business happening online these days, we want to make sure we know who we're dealing with and who we're actually going after. So really the thread that's running through all of this feedback is the need to know your customer. And with that, I will pass it off to David to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Maggie. So we truly believe that understanding your customer is key to solving all those issues that Maggie just talked about, but also to making more effective decisions at every level of your business, right? From how you allocate resources to how you align your territories, how you assign accounts and leads, and inevitably how you end up landing and expanding across your customers. As Maggie was saying, today, with companies hurting as a result of the new kind of COVID economy and moving into this protectionist mode, unless you're a company like Zoom, it's really harder to secure new customers or net new logos than ever. So it's no secret that it's more important than ever to foster and grow your existing customer base. And I love that stat that Maggie mentioned so much, that 79% of B2B companies are focusing on their existing customers. It just makes sense, right? These customers know you, they trust you, and hopefully recognize that you've helped them to become successful. So they're more willing to spend money with you after having seen that success. So understanding your customers is key. It allows you to glean major insights about your own business, like the fact that typically 70% of B2B companies' revenue comes from just 20% of their customers. That's a huge portion of your revenue from a small portion of your customers. And that statistic's both proof that land and expand works, and it's evidence that there's so much more room for growth amongst your customers. So today we wanted to talk to you about how you can grow your existing customer base through an effective land and expand strategy. And the first thing to note is that if you're going through this land and expand strategy, it really needs to be a company-wide business decision, because it's going to take a lot of your departments working together to make it happen. That's one of the reasons why I love the rise of revenue operations, right? Strategies like this just couldn't be nearly as successful in the old siloed version of the departments of sales versus marketing versus customer success. It's going to take everyone working together as a team to get from landing the customer initially on the sale to dramatically expanding your footprint across those businesses. Now, it turns out that the bigger you are as a business, the more difficult landing and expanding becomes, and not to the customer, but internally. So on top of getting your teams just to work together into that revenue operation strategy, just understanding your customers becomes a lot more difficult. And that almost seems crazy that in 2020 that's the case, but it makes sense, right? In 2020, understanding your customers, you have all of these different systems involved, right? You have your Salesforce CRM, you have a marketing automation platform, you might have a separate customer success platform or an ERP, probably a central data warehouse. There's several teams involved on your side, like we mentioned, the sales, customer success, and marketing teams. But on the customer side, there's tons of people, right? There's different departments, there's different divisions. Sometimes there's subsidiaries that you're already doing business with as well. There can be huge volumes of leads, both outbound and inbound. And in large teams, there's extremely complex go-to-market rules. Now, on top of that, every system has bad data, right? Everyone has duplicates, they have empty records, they might have records from 10 years ago.
Yeah, and David, that's a very interesting point that you bring up on the bad data and the duplicate, records. I think that sometimes something as small as a duplicate record might not seem like it would have an impact on your business, but in reality, duplicates impact, marketing for campaigns, sales for, which account they're, mapped to, territory alignment, opportunities, contacts, etc. But what we've seen is that over the lifetime of one duplicate, it can have a pretty large system and really clog up your resources. We commissioned a report recently, a total economic impact report from Forrester, and they found out for that a large scale enterprise, the elimination of 20,000 duplicates saved that customer $450,000 over 3 years. So this, scales and how much it can, help your business by how big you are. But I think that it's especially relevant for, companies that are going through frequent mergers or acquisitions, to make sure that you're looking at your data, you're trying to minimize your duplicates, especially with the volume of leads that are coming in and the complexity of the hierarchies and go-to-market rules. But in summary, it's interesting, like understanding your customer is hard, right? But the flip side of that is that once you do understand your customer, there is so much that you can do with those insights and so much growth that you can see. And that's what we'll talk about a little bit next. So landing in the accounts, when landing in accounts, go-to-market segmentation, territory planning, market activation, that's still complex. It takes a combination of your own data that you have in your CRM, or what we like to call first-party data, and third-party data to really give you the insights that you need to be successful. So, when you're trying to land in accounts, you really need a true north strategy, right? Like you need a direction for your go-to-market team, for your sales team to attack, for your marketing team to attack. And, having incomplete fields or a lack of data can impact that. Not knowing geographically or industry vertical or, company size or intent data on your go-to-market strategy, will impact your conversion rates, on like marketing KPIs as well as opportunities for your sales team. So lack of direction or lack of data is, lack of direction or lack of data, is one impact that you really don't want to experience when you're trying to land in accounts. The other one is outdated data or, an incorrect direction. If you have incomplete data fields, incorrect data fields, it's really not going to help you. Within the next 60 minutes, 692 new businesses will open their doors and 90 companies will change their name. And we know that from Dun & Bradstreet because that's what we see in our data cloud. So with the market volatility of today, fit, intent, and risk are all factors, that are important to making sure that your decision-making is accurate. You want your reporting to be accurate so that you can, make sure that you're going in the correct direction for your team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Maggie. Data decays quickly these days, right? And not just the names and new businesses that you mentioned, but even things like employee count and annual revenue becomes out of date quickly. And those are usually what companies are using to define their territory. So what can happen as a result of having decayed or outdated data is that a company may assign what would be kind of an upper commercial account to an SMB rep whose quota is much lower than a commercial rep. And what that can do is it lead to either a disproportionately high commission payout or worse, a smaller sale because that rep just wasn't shooting as high as the commercial rep would have been. So it can actually have a really big impact on your revenue.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I think that that's all part of the buyer's journey, right? In a digital first world, you want that, buyer's journey to be as seamless as possible across both marketing and sales. And, once you assess your data to make sure that you have a strong landing strategy, this is really where the linkage comes in.
Totally. So when you're looking at growing the amount of business you're doing with the customer, you first have to get an understanding of, well, what has the customer bought already? And on a smaller customer with an individual record, that's not too difficult, right? Salesforce already does a pretty good job of that. So, but if you're trying to implement this strategy company-wide, you need to give this insight to everyone at a glance across all of your teams, right? Across not just sales, but marketing as well and customer success. And in order to do that, a lot of times there's a lot of data work you have to do first. So let's use Honeywell as an example. One of the biggest companies on the planet, right? It's a global enterprise. You need to identify all the records in your system that represent Honeywell. So you do a search for Honeywell in Salesforce, and you can immediately see where all the problems stem from. A lot of times the companies will be named something to do with Honeywell. Like you can see here, I just typed in a search for Honeywell, and the search returns something like 50 accounts. But that only gets you so far, right? More often than not with our customers, we see different naming strategies they've used. Like they'll include the customer's department in the name, like Honeywell Aerospace or Honeywell Home, that kind of thing. Or they'll put their own internal department in the name because that's what they've sold. Other times there might be abbreviations like IBM instead of International Business Machines. And so it causes problems trying to find these accounts. You can use domains. That's another approach, right? But again, there's problems because different countries, have different domains, like Honeywell.com versus Honeywell.ca. On top of that, there's different subsidiaries with entirely different names and domains. Like a major subsidiary of Honeywell is Intelligrated, right? Totally unaffiliated. So this is kind of like getting a ton of puzzle pieces from different sets and trying to put a puzzle together with no guide, right? It's almost impossible. So this is where using an external data set like D&B becomes so imperative, right? You need that third-party data to identify that these records are actually part of the same organization. And D&B's done such a fantastic job with their hierarchy linkage data, right? They have like millions of records explaining which accounts report to whom. So if we go back to that puzzle analogy, the D&B data is like getting the picture or a guide on how to put that puzzle together. So now that we have the data, the next step is to put the puzzle together by linking all those records together in Salesforce. And that's where we come in. That's where Traction Complete helps. We built software that takes the D&B data and it reconciles it against your own data to link all those records together into a corporate family tree, like you can see here, Honeywell across all of their different subsidiaries. It's almost like the software puts that puzzle together for you automatically. And all of a sudden, you can see the entire customer 360 of Honeywell. So it allows you to identify who is working with the customer on your side, the sales reps, how much the customer is spending, and it gives you insight into the true size of that customer, which allows you to make those critical business decisions, like should we have a named account rep that owns all of Honeywell? Now, the next step is understanding, okay, well, what's the gray space? What have we sold and what haven't we? Right? We mentioned that it wasn't that big a job on an individual record, but multiply that across hundreds of thousands of records and it becomes a massive undertaking. Reps have to dive into each account, find out which have purchased and which haven't, and then further for those that have purchased, which products they've bought, and almost more importantly, which haven't they bought. And to do that, they have to go through every close one opportunity and then every product line item in Salesforce. And so what we recommend and what our software helps with is to bring that information to the forefront to provide kind of a map of where your reps and your marketing team should be investing their time, right? Identify the products or at least the product families, depending on how many products or services you offer, and bring that to the forefront so you can see graphically what the customers purchased at a glance and be able to report on it. So now you can roll out to your team, here is the potential gray space for expanding that business, for cross-selling and upselling within these accounts. And next, so we talked about within each individual account, there's probably the cross-sell, upsell, that gray space, but there's also the idea of white space. And that's those accounts that are part of the broader business, part of Honeywell, that we don't have in our Salesforce environment, right? That we didn't know existed. And this is again where Dun & Bradstreet's data is so critical, because you may have done a pretty good job selling into Honeywell already, right? We had those 50 Honeywell accounts and probably some more subsidiaries, but we had no idea that there's also other companies like Sperian Protection, like Avanti, that maybe spin out product innovations, that might be acquisitions or just separate locations. But the point is that if you know about other areas of the business that are influenced by the companies that you've already sold to, then you've found further room to expand across. And the beauty of landing and expanding is that it's so much easier to gain the trust of new people if their contacts will vouch for you already. And further, in companies like Honeywell, you may already have all the legal work done, which can accelerate the purchase dramatically. Okay, so we've talked about the data perspective, right? The next portion of the land and expand strategy is the execution of it. And a lot of people focus primarily, and for good reason, on the sales aspect, right? They're going to put a new initiative around land and expand. They're going to give new targets and quotas to their reps. And for those accounts and those roles that you need to grow your accounts by 120% or something to that effect. And that's certainly important. But on top of that, your company needs to make sure that this is the entire business's goal. The business has to have the same understanding and the same goals in order to make all of this happen, because a lot of times the strategy is hugely reliant on the customer success team. And this is why, again, that movement to joint revenue operations becomes so critical, because there's no way that a customer is going to want to expand the footprint of your product if you haven't made them successful to begin with. And maybe it's a service and not a product. If your delivery of that service didn't go well, they're not going to want to expand. So your customer success or delivery teams are key. Getting the sale is important, right? Landing, and then actually making that customer successful is just as important. They have to do a great post-sale deployment. They have to then work with them to make sure that they understand the customer's business, and so they can recognize opportunities to grow. And in that case, you have to be able to have a customer success manager or an architect that will focus on the adoption of the product across different departments, and then keep in touch to foster the relationship there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense between the customer success and the sales side, David. You know, from a marketing perspective, I think it's so important to make sure that marketing is, making sure to engage in customer-based campaigns. And there's a lot going on with account-based marketing and, white glove field engagement these days. So making sure that marketing is monitoring that engagement and serving those insights up to sales in a way that, sales as well as customer success can act on that to, continue to, grow that gray space, grow that white space. So, I think that there's a lot there between the collaboration of all these teams and this new revenue operations, organization that's coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. And the data is so key again, right? Because when you've set up the understanding of the customer, you can now monitor things like adoption across the board, right? You can see cases or issues through the customer 360. Ideally, you actually have notifications in your system that let the entire revenue team know when there are changes, right? Because everyone wants to know marketing, sales, and customer success if adoption is dropping, or perhaps if activities have dropped. So you can make sure that these customers aren't slipping through the cracks and that they're being fostered for that growth potential. So I'll give you an example of an extremely well executed land and expand situation. So we have a customer that makes and sells visitor management software for signing in at the front desk of an office. And for them, each location of a business represents further sales potential, right? They're doing location-based sales. And one of their reps took over a new territory and saw that it included a branch of Thermo Fisher, this massive global enterprise. And he could see from our hierarchies app that they'd already sold into one location of Thermo, and that using the D&B data in our hierarchies white space, they could see that there was actually 1,073 total entities that were part of Thermo Fisher. So this enormous potential for them. So he went about getting brokered into one location based on the initial sale they already had from the contacts there. And he was able to sell into another location. So he used the customer win story to get into that second spot. He then did it again and got into a third. And at that point, he recognized, hey, I might be able to broker an enterprise level agreement. So he went to the global headquarters and asked to set up that enterprise-wide agreement. And they told him, forget it. They said, listen, we have 1,000 locations. You've sold into 3. Go sell into more, and then maybe we'll talk. And so that's what he did, right? He went in. He was able to use the 3 locations that they had now sold into to broker them into, I think, 3 more. And after that, in a very short amount of time, he went back to the global HQ and he said, listen, I've already sold into 6 locations very, very quickly. Let's talk about this enterprise level deal. And that's what they did. So they agreed to make it the de facto visitor management system across all of their sites. And he turned that, I think it was, I don't know the exact numbers, but turned the initial $5,000 deal into almost a 7-figure annual contract. And so this is a great example that if you can serve all of this information up to your sales team, you can provide them with the ability to recognize those opportunities of where they can grow the account.
Yeah, and again, David, I just think that this is a great example, again, of that expansion of, 79% of CMOs want to focus on getting creative and using the data and the customers that they have to their own advantage, being able to, open up a global enterprise deal, over after, selling into one instance of a company is just really a great way to show that, data for the sake of data, is not super helpful, but the insights and the activation that you're able to, take off of that data is really what matters. And so with that, wanted to, go into some potential challenges that, you might face. We've established that data and coordination between teams is what is essential. But, sometimes we hear that, oh, it's going to, take too long to understand the data. I think it's important to highlight that you don't have to uncover all of your opportunities at one point. Your data and linkages will improve over time, and you'll be able to surface up new opportunities. As you go through this journey. Another one that we see is that there's so much to do. So again, getting your data right is not a one-time project. it's iterative, so don't try and boil the ocean all at once. If you're looking for a good place to start, getting a check on the current health of your data will really be a good place to start to help you make a plan for the future.
Totally. One of the things that we hear from our customers all the time is that they want to clean up all their duplicates before they can start something like this. And it makes sense that they want to try and clean up their data first, but just linking your accounts together provides the visibility to your teams without having to actually clean up that data first, because it can be a major undertaking and a very lengthy process to clean up all the data in your system. So if you can at least expose all of these accounts and what they've sold and what they haven't, a few duplicates aren't going to change the insights that the sales reps and the marketing teams can glean from that.
Yep. And the last one that we really wanted to touch on is, you will have to reconfigure some processes, right? But, again, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Take it iteratively and, know that this kind of investment will reduce the complexity across your customer success, ops, marketing, sales, your entire revenue operations team, and help you drive growth in a challenging market to really capitalize on that data that you already have and the opportunity that you just have not uncovered yet. So with that, next steps. I touched on this a little bit earlier. D&B has a data health scan that can help you understand the current health of your data. Whether you want to, schedule a walkthrough of those findings internally with your team or meet with one of those specialists, we're happy to help there. And then again, adjust your go-to-market strategy. Look at that gray space. Look at that white space. And see what makes sense for your team. David, did you have anything else to add here? If not, we can dive into some of the Q&A that I saw come in.
No, I think we covered it. Yeah, I could talk about this all day, but let's jump over to Q&A.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's see here. The first one that we had come in was, on exploring gray space, can you elaborate more on how you surface up customer purchase history? So David, I think that this one would be you.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a really good question. So our software helps to kind of create a graphical display of those, but really what you can do if you want to do it on your own was to create roll-ups of the product line items if you're using product line items in Salesforce. So roll those up to the opportunity level and then aggregate them if you have a lot of products. So perhaps instead of the individuals, let's say you're selling 400 products, you can't have an icon for each. So you would aggregate them to product family and say, hey, these are the Salesforce clouds or whatever that you cover. And then roll that up to the account. So you have kind of two levels of roll-up fields. And then at the account level, tie those to an icon through like a formula field to say, okay, well, if we have a closed-won opportunity with this product line item or this product family, then we're going to show this colored icon to say, hey, we've sold this. And if you have an open opportunity, you can actually have like a different color to represent that. And then, of course, if you haven't ever positioned it, just have that placeholder icon so that immediately all of your reps can see what you've sold and what you haven't, and they can consume a lot more information graphically than they could by reading and digging. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. All right. Another one that we had come in was, I understand there are a variety of different types of company linkages. Can you speak to what you recommend? So I can touch on that a little bit. So it really depends on your organization. Everyone has their own complexity, but really there's two main types at D&B. There's the corporate linkage and the alternative linkage. So the corporate is going to talk about like your majority owned ownership or legal linkage. So that's going to really be that branch to headquarter, subsidiary to parent kind. And then your alternative linkage, which is going to be a relationship outside of that majority ownership. So this would be more like franchises, agents, dealers, healthcare networks, etc.
Totally. Maybe I'll just add to that, Maggie, that it really, like you said, it really depends on your business. But at the end of the day, all you care about is who is influencing whom, right, in their decision making. And a lot of times that's legal, right? If you're legally owned by the same parent company, of course, a lot of decisions are made together and you're influenced by one of the other sister or parent companies. But sometimes it has nothing to do with legal information. So let's take auto dealerships as an example. So legally, they're all owned independently. They're all franchises, if you will, but they all sell something like a Toyota. And so those people talk, right? And they influence one another into what they're using for different solutions. Sometimes they even have gone together to make kind of group purchasing organizations. So in those cases, that's where that alternative linkage that Maggie mentioned is so important, to make those relationships you might not have known about otherwise. Another example might be partners. If you do a lot of partner go-to-market, so you have resellers and that sort of thing, you might just want to know, okay, well, who have these partners touched from a customer perspective, so that then you can see, okay, well, where is their footprint, and use those influential relationships, right? And so that has nothing to do with legal. That's more of your purchasing. And so you can tie that together through your opportunity lookups.
Great. Well, and David, I think that brings us to time for today. So I just wanted to let the team know, and everyone on the call, that if you had any additional questions, we will be sure to follow up with you after the session. And David, just wanted to thank you again for your time, and thank everyone that joined us today. We hope that this was helpful in helping to find some new strategies in the current marketplace, and giving you additional information on how to land and expand within your current portfolio.
Great. Thanks so much, Maggie.
All right. Thank you.
Wow. What a day it's been. Tremendous content, tremendous presenters, and tremendous value for everyone. Now, before we say goodbye, I just wanted to give a special shout out to all of our panelists for the insights that they shared with us in order to help us all think and act differently. The time to embrace change is absolutely right now. Now listen, all of these sessions have been recorded, so if there's something you missed or something you'd like to share, you can come back to the landing page and view it on demand anytime. Also, if you have any questions or would like someone from our team to follow up with you, please just let us know through the question and answer box for this session. And on behalf of the entire Dun & Bradstreet team, I wish you all health, happiness, and success as we head into the final months of 2020. Let's grow.